So as Amy was saying, I started out on the paleo side, and the only difference that I can see between paleo and archaeology is what you're digging up. It's the same methods, it's the same everything, the same documentation, the same, you're just looking for different stuff. So what I'm going to talk about is, here we go. Porcupine Cave, an embarrassment of riches. So when I started out with the Denver Museum of Natural History, as it was then, and also WIPS, which is like a sister organization over there, not really sisters, but same kind of thing. WIPS set up tons of digs. They actually ran the digs, and they did some symposiums. And when I joined them, Porcupine Cave dig was the dig that you knew you had arrived if you got invited to the Porcupine Cave dig. It was like, ooh, it's so cool. So as soon as we get the slides up, I will tell you a little bit more about this.
What I need to do here to get rid of this barn.
Okay. So Porcupine Cave, I'll show you the maps, is up in South Park. And it's basically, there's a big floodplain that sits up there between all the mountain peaks. And the cave that we were in was a limestone cave. So you can see there's little ridges all over. And about 20 miles to the west was Buena Vista, with all in 14. We were out on a working ranch. About 20 miles from Buena Vista. And this is, I've been on some digs. This one was, in terms of the organization and just being out in the field. You guys have all been out in the field and you know what it's like, and it's hot and dirty, and you're camping while you're digging. It's so much fun. We were camping while we were digging in a cave.
I don't want that view.
We don't want that view.
Oh, okay. All right, we do. There's a clicker right there.
Where do I put it? Ah, here we go. So here we are. They actually, the book, I'll show you later, they actually put the maps in the book. And this is kind of controversial because you don't always want to advertise where your site is. So Colorado, yep, here we are in Colorado, and it's South Park. You don't need to worry about that. Just know that that's about where it is. This is our geology wizard, Bob Reynolds. He is still at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. And thank God for him, because he was one of those people that could talk almost anybody down off their emotional ledge. And there were a few emotional ledges when you have this many paleontologists and this many people all in one spot. He also made the maps. So just a couple of maps from a couple of different directions. This is the sideways view. I know there's a real name for it, but I don't know what it is. Sideways view of what's going on. There's the adit. This was an old mine. They were in there looking for gold and silver, which they did not find, but some cool things happened later. So there was an adit here, and then there was this nice ladder that you have to get everything, including all your people and your samples, all your digging supplies up and down. And then this is just the other way. Not that you have to memorize this, but just know it's like, yeah. And some of those places were not very big. So what did we find up there? The whole thing about Porcupine Cave is it's at 9,500 feet, which we think is normal, but in the world of paleontology, having a good deposit at 9,500 feet from the Pleistocene is like, that was a really big deal because you didn't have it. The other thing was that it went from somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago up to 600,000 years ago, or maybe 300,000. I've seen a couple of different dates.
Sorry, apparently the screen is not advancing. For those at home.
One of the things about Porcupine Cave being such an embarrassment of riches, there's at least 100,000 specimens at the Denver Museum, maybe 200,000. Most of them are little bitty bun bones, but there's tons. There's tons and tons, and they're in the Indiana Jones type warehouse thing. Nobody knows where they are. So.
Yeah.
Well, maybe just back it out there and go back in.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
Wow, they're kicking it. They're kicking ass now. Hey,
And while we're waiting for the computer, this is right about the time that we were switching from film to digital, and the digital cameras were really awful around 98, 2000. So this is a taped together panoramic picture because this is what we had. So if you look around the whole site, this is where the camp is. A huge camp, and I've got some slides of it later. It is a working ranch, so it comes with cows. Also comes with all sorts of other critters because we're out in the middle of nowhere. Where is the Porcupine Cave over here? So it was up a little bit. We had the 4-wheel up to it, and then about a quarter mile across the ridge, you get all the supplies there. Wheelbarrows were our friend. So I wrote the past around what was going on there. I have a question. You, and once in your investigation or later, how did it get this lead for? I have no idea. It may have been because that was the person who found it there. I don't know. They found the number of samples that I showed you, that one page that with all the black lines on it. There are in the book, there are pages and pages and pages of that. All the species, 50 species of birds. So like, you know, we're talking 100,000, 200,000 samples. Everything for a million and a half years got dumped into this cave. These have got dumped in, it's a limestone cave. So the openings, they open, they close, things fall in, predators drag their prey in, the back rats have lived in it for the whole time. A number of other animals have lived in it, sheltered in it, eaten in it, fallen into it, been dragged into it. So there's just tons and tons of in the cave. They haven't been disturbed. So it was just very good. There were so many samples in there. There's still a ton of samples in there. If anybody ever comes around to going back in and wants to do a cave dig.
Got it on here. It shows on there, right, but I don't know if the slide on it.
So where this started is that a geologist named Dan Rasmussen, who was also very involved in WIPS, was up there caving. Working?
Yep.
But it's not this year.
So
Are we sharing on screen?
he was up there caving and they were looking for whatever they could find in the cave, and they found some bones. So they took some bones out. I don't know anything about what they did for permitting or anything like that. But they took some bones and they shot them around. They went to the University of Kansas. The paleontologists there eventually ended up out in California. Eventually Carnegie was up there for a couple of years. University of California was up there for a couple of years. And then the Denver Museum and WIPS took it over and ran it for 10, 12 years, you know, a long time. Works? Oh. Okay, now I can't advance it.
I don't know. I am so sorry.
Roll control. Upper right. There it is. Okay,
All right.
so there's our cave. This is, looks at the time zones and what the climate was. So it was unknown, it was cold, it was warm, it was cool, it was warm. So the climate changed. You got different layers in there, you got different animals. And that was the big deal. Long period of time, climate change. lots and lots of different animals. This is just one page out of the paper that's in the book, and talks about, these are all lists of species. It goes on for pages and pages. It's amazing what we found in there. We put together, this is mostly about the organization of it. So there was an annual report that was put together every year. So these are some of the animals that we found, pieces of giant sloth. I worked on the camel, I was so excited. I'm not sure that they ever got it out. The camel apparently fell in. Big carnivores, little prey animals, every kind of thing, birds, snakes, reptiles, deer, whatever. And then this is the map of, can you do that? Nope. This is a map of the cave looking down on it. So you come in from the attic here, go down the stairs, and then go all through the cave. So one of the things about the paleontologist on the right is Russ Graham. He was the last paleontologist that did it at a human that. And one of the things that happened is that he left. And so when people leave, they're the driving force, things kind of fall apart. So again, this is a picture for you, those of you at home. This is the picture of the camp, looking at it from the upside, from the west side. And the really cool thing is that there's a spring right here. So we got to use that for actually water for the showers and water for the wet screening. And then everybody brought their own camps. We had a sorting tent down here. We had a kitchen tent. We had a dining tent. We had the tables and chairs that went with it. We had cooking stoves. We had real dishes. We had a trailer that came in with probably 1,000 gallons worth of water, potable water, and that's what we used for cooking and washing. It was just a wonderful setup. So people would get up in the morning, they'd be able to have a hot breakfast, they'd make their lunch, call up to the cave if they were going in the cave. They weren't down here screening or picking. And then when you came down from the cave all covered in pack rat piss, you got to take a hot shower. And then you got served a hot dinner. And then also in the evenings, we had lectures. So probably 2-3 times a week, somebody would lecture on various paleontology topics or what was going on with the cave or whatever. We also had the latrines. There was eventually 2 of them. So it wasn't a hole in the ground. You actually got to sit on a seat. And here it is. This is the best thing that ever happened. This is a hot shower. 2 garbage cans. You fill them up with water from the spring. Those are gasoline heaters. So somebody fired them up about 30 minutes before the people came down from the cave. And then you went in, had 2 cubicles in there so you could get all naked. You could wash your hair. You had hot water. It was the most awesome thing. It made this whole thing bearable. So anybody, y'all been out in the field? This was great. No hotel, free showers. We did have other critters that came and worked with us. This is the working ranch, so the cows were there, so cows and all their things. And then this is from one night when the bear came. So bears were definitely an issue, so you had to, close up all your food. We did sit in camp one day and watched out here on the edge. We watched the bear cruise around. He was looking at us, but we were to decide whether or not we were worth the food. And then one night, Bob Reynolds was coming back to camp and saw a roadkill, saw a badger in a roadkill. He picked it up, put it in his truck, brought it back to camp, and we did a necropsy on that. And we were all there. Craig's child was there. That was great having him up there. So here we are, dissecting that poor badger. So part of the entertainment for Porcupine Cave. Then we did screen watching. This is the hard way to do it, apparently, is to have a kiddie pool and put the stuff in the little creek. And everybody decided that that was just too hard to do. So they decided they would make screen boxes. So we spent a couple weekends making screen boxes. So if anybody wants directions for how to make screen boxes, whoops. I have all the directions on how to make screen boxes because they decided that was easier. And then rather than standing in the creek They would put it out, and then as each level came off, they put it on sheets and left it out there to dry. There's our trusty showers and our picking tent, so you could sit at a table in a chair and pick bones out of gravel. Okay, so now we go up to the cave. It was a 4-wheeling trip up to the cave, and then we had to walk maybe a quarter mile with the wheelbarrow full of all the stuff. So this is just a little piece of the stuff that we had to haul in the cave. The wheelbarrow down here on the bottom, that was our friend. We had a generator up there so we could have electric lights in the cave.
What's a fucking?
We didn't have a latrine, that was our latrine. Somebody had to take it down every day, somebody had to take the bag. But again, better than digging a hole. And this is the piece of the cave. There's a hole. You're welcome to go through that. And this is one of the tunnels that we actually did use. And you can see how like kind of small it is. You're trying to get yourself through that, and you're trying to get all your equipment through that. We had to rebuild the ladder and shore up a bunch of other stuff in there. And then this looks like a bunch of paleontologists having a great time talking about what they're finding. This was actually a little different than what that looks like, because as the stuff drips into the cave, it makes a cone. You can't just, you know, take one layer, one layer. They were having a little argument here about how we're going to excavate those cones, because what you need to do is excavate the whole outer layer of this cone. Then you go to the next cone, and you put to the next cone. So there was apparently that one had not been what was being done before, and then Russ got there, and the way we're going to do it. So this is what we're like inside. You're in a hard hat, you're in a cave suit, and fortunately you get to throw the cave suit away. The other thing that they did is that after they put it in 5-pound bags, you had to haul it back up through the cave with the sled, get it up the ladder outside, and then they would dry screen it outside the cave so that you were hauling a lot less stuff, because again, you still had to get it back to your vehicles, take it back down until you get it wet screen washed. And this is the view from the cave. So big floodplain with a little creek running through it. It was the most fun. It was great people, but it was an unbelievable amount of work. There's a lot of personalities involved. There was a lot of work. And what ended up happening, it totally burned me out. I left in 2000. I just couldn't do it anymore because I had a sales staff. I was already working for the elderly. Besides organizing this for the whole year, and then running the camp once I was up there. People moved on, people got old, we got tired of crawling around in the cave, people died. Lane Anderson was the paleontologist that was working on the bones. She was the one that was driving it. She was the one that she had picking every weekend to work on picking that up. And then in 2002, she died of a heart attack. And I think that was probably the end of that. Unfortunately, people just got burned out because it was work. But Whips ended up owning all that stuff. And the other thing that I would do, if I was going to do it differently again, is that when it comes to takedown, I would hire some young studlings to go get the truck and take down because all that stuff had to get taken down. All the supports for the tents, the tables, the tents, the tarps, the chairs, all that stuff had to get taken down. And it's the end of 2 weeks, and you're like, no. Pack it up into the truck, take it to the storage unit, and then put it away in the storage unit, and then you can go home. So I would hire somebody to do that because everybody's just way too tired to do that at the end. But it was a wonderful setting, and with a little ingenuity, you can have showers in the field. We got a lot of publicity out of it. Denver Museum did it. The press got a hold of it. This was in the Denver Museum, right up about what was going on in the cave. And I think this also contributed to why it went away. There was a really good, what I now recognize as a site steward report that came out in 2001 that Dan Rasmussen, the original person that did it, went up, and there was all sorts of vandalism in the cave. Because once it gets out where your stuff is, where your cave is, then people going up and they want to see. There was a lot of vandalism in the cave. And I think that helped to get the demise of that. But we did get the book. This is all about Porcupine Cave. This is a good summary of the papers. It's got a bunch of papers in here. There are a ton more papers that are out there. But you have to have library access and you have to look really hard because they don't say Porcupine Cave, they say something else. And that's Porcupine Cave. Question.
But, how many seasons did they do?
Probably about 20. Dan Rasmussen was up there, discovered it in 80 and 81, and it was shortly after that that they got, first Carnegie was the first one in, then University of California went, and then eventually the Denver Museum did it. The Denver Museum probably did it for 12 or 15 years. I don't know where it ended up.
Is there any human evidence in there other than the miners?
Just the miners, but there was a lot of stuff. There was one place that we're digging, like, dig over here and see if there's anything. So we're digging and there's all sorts of bones. And wow, this is really cool. And I'm down about 6 or 8 inches. And I have a group of people who came up to see that were watching me, and I'm trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about. And we're going in the fossils. And she goes, well, those are still bone, aren't they? They're not really fossils. Yes, they're really just bone. And we're getting down 6 or 8 inches, shoelaces. Okay, pack it back in. We should put it in a plastic bag and label it and said, don't dig here. It's all disturbed. But yeah, there's no evidence of humans. This is way before that, except after the miners got in there. Okay, great. Thank you.